What's up, guys, and welcome to Making a Video Game. Today I have the pleasure of talking with Alan Wilson from Tripwire Interactive. How are you doing, Alan?
Hey, I'm good, and say it's Friday, so I'm even better.
That's right. Well, once again, thanks for taking the time to come and to talk to us today. The way that your company got started, the way your development team got started and still currently does business, I think is just an inspirational story, and I think it's one that needs to be told. So I guess with that being said, I guess my first question would have to be, how did you get started in the video game industry? How did you start? Did you start writing a lot of code? Exactly how did you get your feet wet?
Yeah, actually, to put that in perspective, I haven't cut a line of code in over 20 years. Yeah, I mean, if you're asking about how did I personally get started, you have to keep in mind I'm kind of the old man around here. I actually started work as a coder in the commercial environment. Oh God, well over 30 years ago. But I'd always had an interest in simulation. Back in those days, it was board game stuff, and I did sort of amateur work, dabbling around and messing around with board game design about this. For anyone who remembers, the now ancient history of Avalon Hill and the Advanced Squad Leader and stuff like that. Right. I used to do some work on all the games like that, which is lurking. I still have a copy of the rules set lurking right behind me. That's a very old rule set. But yeah, I mean, I did a commercial career, coding, and then project management, project leading, big programs in the banking sector and all sorts of other stuff. But always had this, the interest in simulation and all of that. And I think it was, for me, kind of one of the triggers was, I can't remember which one it was now, about late 90s. It was whichever was first out of Medal of Honor and Call of Duty. Which was first out? Medal of Honor?
I think so.
I can't even remember.
To tell you the truth, I can't either now.
It's almost 20 years ago now.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, and I remember jumping because I'd played sort of computer simulations of especially particularly World War II combat. Off and on during all those years, and interested to see what you could actually do with all that. And then that came along and suddenly went, hey, here's an opportunity to actually get into the battle. And I played those first Medal of Honors and Call of Duty. This is very cool. This is a lot. There's a lot of fun in this stuff, but it's not what I want it to be. And so I started sort of hauling around in the early days of internet stuff, going, is there anyone else with these sort of interests? And ended up bumping into people on the internet. Myself and a few others got rolling on a mod in about 2000, I think it was, which was called the Russian Front. God, I've almost forgotten that first mod. And that, like so many mods, then and now, it went wonderfully for a while, and we produced some bits and pieces. I was thinking, no, this stuff has got me really interested now. I want to do more of this. And I was doing mostly the research, design, that sort of thing. I think part of it was I wasn't about to start to learn a completely new code set, a tool set. I've been through that 2 or 3 times, and I didn't fancy going through it again. Anyway, I had a full-time job, so I just didn't have the hours to throw in.
Right.
But then I think it was 2003. I mean, I'd come off that mod and I was looking around for something else to apply some time to as an amateur, and bumped into the Red Orchestra crew. Thought, actually, that stuff's starting. I liked the ideas of where they're going, and so spoke to one of the guys who was around in those days, and ended up on the team about a day later, doing, again, research, writing, design, all that sort of stuff. And I guess some of my project management experience occasionally came in. That was kind of where it all started from. The whole, as history shows, the Red Orchestra mod, from 2003 onwards, just picked up this amazing head of steam, got really popular. Went all the way through to win grand prize in the the 2004 Make Something Unreal contest.
Right, and let's talk about that real quick. Like you entered,
sure.
you and your team, and John was in on that team, right? John Gibson.
Yeah, I mean, the team was, I mean, keep in mind at the time, I was very much, I was kind of sort of just backroom stuff. I was doing writing, research, bits and pieces like that. There were people like John and Bill and others doing a lot more of the actual work, because they would, they could make time to code and do animation and artwork and so on. But like all mods, it was a complete mix of people doing a couple of hours a week and people doing 40 or 50 hours. So it's a real bag.
Right.
I was just, I was just one of many who was sticking a fork in it, trying to help.
And so I'm sorry. So you guys, you guys won that NVIDIA's Make Something Unreal contest, right? And you guys won a $50,000 purse, basically. But the real prize was getting access to that engine, correct?
Yeah. I mean, we've been asked, well. Yeah, we usually get the comment, hey, it was the $1 million contest. You must have really enjoyed winning $1 million. And you go, well, we didn't actually win $1 million.
Right.
It's a shame. But no, as you say, I mean, the actual prize money was 50 grand. Well, not to be sneezed at, but then you have to keep in mind it had to be shared around a team of, I think it was about 20 or 30 people. I can't remember. So nobody walked away rich.
Right.
I think in one of the earlier rounds, one guy got a new computer. That was the level of it. But yeah, as you say, you're quite right. I mean, the big prize realistically was the engine license.
Right.
And actually, because they were coming onto the cusp of changing engines, we actually parlayed it into the old engine for what became our first game. And then access to Unreal 3 when that started to become a.
And your first game was a full game based off of the mod. The mod was called Red Orchestra.
Yep.
It was Red.
Yeah, I think we called it Red Orchestra Combined Arms by the end of it. But yeah.
And then you
started adding vehicles in.
Yeah, and then you guys turned that into a full game after you guys won that Make Something Unreal contest, correct?
Yeah, I mean, we set up the Unreal contest, the Make Something Unreal contest. The results, I think, were announced around Christmas, but the very end of 2004. So in the new year of 2005, four of us who'd kind of, I guess, kind of bubbled to the top of the mod. Not as in necessarily the best people, but perhaps the most committed.
Right.
Had decided that, look, we've got 500,000 players, and we've got something that's almost a game, and surely we should do something with this. So we ended up setting up the company early 2000, I think about February 2005, and then just before any of us had even met, of course, sort of stupid things like that. We always joke, I used to joke with my wife that it was basically we formed a company through internet dating. Yeah, as you say, it just kind of went through that weird patch where we'd sort of set up a company with four of us, didn't have an office or anything, and just sort of there was that brief moment of going, okay, what do we actually do?
Well, you guys took, I mean, you took that mod and you made a full game out of it, but you guys, you took some risk in it too. From what I hear, you guys, someone took a extra mortgage on a house, and some people took money out of retirement just to basically sustain you guys until you could put that game out, correct?
Yeah. Well, you think about it, I think we managed to from memory take something just over 30 grand's worth of prize money, put that in the company. But that, let's be honest, developing a game off something off a little over 30 grand is not going to get you far. And yes, there were we had to basically pull every stunt in the book that we could think of. Yes, there was borrowing money against against assets, otherwise known as houses. There was pillaging relatives' pension funds. There was a loan from a friend, or rather a little mini investment from a friend of mine. There was, it was, we did things like, guys who we couldn't afford any employees, but what we did was, some of the mod team who wanted to help out, what we did was pay them what we could, but we offered them basically a bonus system whereby, look, we can't afford to pay you before we launch, but if we pay you after we launch, we'll pay you what we owe you and a 50% bonus. And a good number of them went for that. So basically, we deferred paying them, and they took some of the, took a little bit of the risk with us.
Were you able to cut out a publisher by doing all that?
Yeah, that was. It was funny because kind of John and I were sort of the business people. He'd worked in the industry for a little bit on America's Army, and John was also a musician in prior life. Had a fairly jaundiced view of music publishers, and I think that carried over to video game publishers in 2000, as they were in 2005. And yeah, I mean, John and I went to GDC, Game Developers Conference in San Francisco in, I think it was early March 2005, and sat and talked with some of the publishers, and there were people, jumping up and down to throw us money. And then, there's one, actually we can talk about, because they said, we said, don't we need to sign a non-disclosure agreement? They went, oh no, we're Midway, we don't do that. So, okay, fine. But, there were companies like that who are willing to offer us a fairly substantial chunk of change. Mm-hmm. But we basically had to give up all rights in the game. And basically what it would turn out to be was, look, basically we give you the game, and you pay us a salary and maybe a bit off the back end if we get very lucky. And we kind of we looked at these sort of deals, because that was very typical of the period. And we looked at these sort of deals and went, why would we do that? What's the point of setting up a company, where we own, and one single asset, and then we promptly sell that one single asset?
Yeah.
What happens, in the best possible situation that we make a bit of money, and if we're really lucky, they let us make the second game. But you look at, Call of Duty and Medal of Honor. I seem to remember that, was it originally 20? Whoever made the original one, they didn't get to make. Yeah, you could see publishers making very cash-driven, strategic decisions about who actually gets to make things.
Right.
We could easily see ourselves being in the situation of, hey, look, we've invented this thing, we sold the asset, and now we've made a bit of cash and we're broke.
Right.
What the hell? And so we just couldn't see ourselves going with that sort of deal, and we were pushing back hard and saying, no, we're not going to give you the IP. And of course, all the publishers at the time just went, well, in that case, we're not doing the deal, because that's how it works. So
right.
we'd reached this sort of impasse with big publishers. And I think John picked up the phone. Back in those days, you could pick up the phone and you'd get Valve's voice system, and he just went, oh, Doug Lombardi. And ended up on the phone with Doug Lombardi, I think it was anyway, saying, look, are you guys thinking of have you guys thought about doing third-party games on Steam? I think Doug basically went, funny you should mention, we were just talking about that the other day. And the rest is history. We were one of the first signed up to release over Steam. We had to then, of course, scrape the money together to get the game done.
Right.
Small detail. Which is where, let's say, the pillaging of mortgages, pension funds, and everything else came in to keep ourselves going long enough to get the game out the door. But it was an interesting time. I mean, the publishers that we dealt with were very much a product of their time. The way it was expected to work was, well, congratulations, you're a developer, you have no money, we have money, you have what we want, a game, so we'll take the game and we'll give you some money, okay? And that was it. That was the way it worked. And I'm happy to say that the whole Steam idea worked out. we had some fun and games with, because we did do a deal for some retail publishing once we'd already got the Steam deal signed up. And the publisher there, still months later, couldn't get his head around the idea that, they kind of tried to hold a gun to our head over one or two issues after the game was released, and we just went, no. And developers just couldn't, before digital distribution, developers couldn't do that. You were entirely dependent on the publisher. And what digital distribution gave us was, that level of freedom to go, no, we've got another revenue source. We would like to work with you, but we don't have to. I mean, the split between digital and retail sales at the time was very different to what it is today. I think initially something like 60% of our units, I can't remember off the exact numbers, but certainly more than 50-60% were retail sales still in those days. But even so, the numbers that were done on digital, I think we've said before, I mean, the numbers we sold in the first few days of Red Orchestra on Steam paid for the whole development. And you're going, bloody hell, it worked. I think we were as surprised as anybody else.
But that's awesome because, like you said, it gave you the freedom. It gave you total control of something that you guys are responsible for creating, and you didn't have to. Basically, you didn't get cut out of it. You were able to make a second one, because you still owned those rights. All that stuff did very well. So, how far after the release of your first game were you able to actually start hiring people to work full time?
I'm trying to think, actually. I'd have to look back because, I mean, by the book, I didn't actually get on the payroll till 2007.
Oh, wow.
Over a year after. Yeah, I mean, because I was still running my own business back in London, and because it had been I think the polite term is a very speculative venture. We didn't expect. When someone starts up a games company like this, the chances are it's going to crash and burn. So, don't give up the day job. And I hadn't. And I was still living in London. And by the summer of 2006, we kind of realized that I was now starting to almost commute backwards and forwards between London and Atlanta. And that just couldn't go on, So, we started making plans to move over here, moved the family over in 2007. But I'm trying to think when we first hired staff. It probably was 2006, the first couple of staff.
Okay.
From memory?
What would be the first position if you were like, I don't want to do that job, I have to hire somebody to do that job? What was that first opening you were looking for?
The first two guys we brought on were artists.
Okay.
So I'm just trying to think all the way back there and think how it worked out. There was mostly artists. John was doing, he was kind of lead coder, gameplay coder, UI coder, AI coder, and pretty much everything else. Bill was doing, everything animation. I'm thinking about it, the first few people we brought on were artists, character artist, environmental artist, 3D modeler who's still here. Some of these guys are still with us. Who's our lead weapon artist now. So it was mostly art to start with. And I think the next round was a couple of extra coders to give us some, to get out of the situation where John was it.
Oh yeah, we got to get John some coding help, especially because of the next game that you guys kind of fell into, and that was Killing Floor. And Killing Floor started off as a mod too, right? I mean,
yep.
You guys found this mod. You guys kind of passed this around the office, and you guys just fell in love with it. And then you basically just hit it. You went after it, right?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it sounds like you've read the story. I mean, basically, Alex Quick, whose mod it was, we touched base with him. I've forgotten exactly when. First of all, when he'd sort of vaguely thought about, because he'd got a mod on Unreal, he thought about making a mod for RO. And that didn't come to anything the first time around. But we put out 2 mods for Red Orchestra and actually gave them Steam store pages and things like this, and actually released them semi-officially, if you like, actually actual Steam releases, which was Darkest Hour and Mare Nostrum. Think about that one for a second. So that was a while ago. And people had never done that stuff before. I think, again, that caught 1 or 2 people's attention, but also including Alex, who came back and went, hey, this looks kind of cool. If I switch over to being a Red Orchestra mod, could we do that same sort of release and have it through Steam? And the initial reaction was, yeah, sure. I mean, port it over. But I remember he shipped everything over to us. John, I think, one weekend just did a first pass at implementing it over as a Red Orchestra mod. Took him a weekend. And clearly, it came into the office on the Monday morning. Grabbed 1 or 2 of us, I think, and we spent most of the day basically screwing around with a rather battered mod, which had been a mod being created by 2 or 3 people that John had quickly slapped onto the Red Orchestra platform over a weekend. And, the immediate reaction was, oh, this is just too much fun. There's clearly something here. There's something that, even when it looks as rank as it did in that state, the gameplay itself, the actual gameplay loop is just too much fun. We've got to do with this. And we sat down, had the chat, the discussions with Alex, talked it through, ended up bringing it in-house, buying it in-house, did a deal with Alex whereby, he got paid a bit up front, and a bunch of money off the back end. And he's still earning money back end, now I think about it. Which is not bad. Hang on, what are we in, 2018? That's not bad. Ooh, geez, that's 9 years after release. Anyway, we realized, we were not a rich, wealthy company. It's not like we sort of made Ferrari type money off Red Orchestra front. We made enough to employ a few people and to keep ourselves going a little bit. And we'd already started in on Red Orchestra 2 at that point. So we already had a bunch of money into RO2. So we really didn't have a lot to spare to change track and do Killing Floor. We didn't have enough money to keep the studio going for a couple of years while we did Killing Floor. So we ended up doing that in about somewhere start to finish in about 6 months flat. We picked up on it before Christmas in 2008 and released it in, was it May 2009, I think it was.
Well, that 6 months of hard work really paid off, because once you guys were able to release Killing Floor, that game was a huge success for your company, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, we kind of felt we had something really good on our hands. We knew it was going to be rough going out the door, and we knew we would get comparators with Left 4 Dead.
Right.
And I still remember that. There was stuff going on the Steam forums. They were then,
and that was a Valve game too. So you guys were competing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there was people going, I don't get it. Why would Valve have got Left 4 Dead? Why would they have some other zombie game on Steam? People still haven't got the idea that no, it's not about just promoting Valve games. It's about promoting game and selling a bunch of games. And it just worked really well. I mean, I forgot what I think we sold about 6 million units in the end.
Wow.
What the number is nowadays. I mean, it wasn't deliberately wasn't an expensive game. We deliberately priced it. I think the polite term is we went for aggressive pricing, and it got the numbers out there, and it hit off. We thoroughly enjoyed it because it was what it was. Which Killing Floor 1 was basically, when we came to doing Killing Floor 2, we thought, what is the essence of Killing Floor? It's about blowing shit up, looking cool while you're doing it.
Right.
And that's what the game is. And so it's not. It doesn't have any pretensions about being, the great story, the Oscar-winning epic. It's about having fun. It's about pure entertainment, and it succeeded wonderfully at that. In Killing Floor 2, we took the concept, refined it, and made it look a lot prettier. But it's still about that core thing, which is, look, this is raw entertainment. It's intended to be, just a blast of fun for 20 minutes or 2 hours or whatever you want to play. I say that really hit off really well.
And you were also able to make a VR game based off of Killing Floor, also. And
yeah, I mean that was an interesting spin, but yeah.
Well, that leads me to my next question. Is kind of like,
sure.
Can you kind of tell me what, like, some developers strictly focus on, like, okay, we're a VR developer, or we're we're a PC developer. What can you tell me? What differences are there in making a game for VR and just like a regular PC or console game?
VR as it was when we started into Incursion. I mean, there's still a lot of unknowns. There still is today. I mean, everything from just the basic movement to when we were starting into Incursion, what's a good way to do a two-handed weapon? What's, these are just things that people are only. You look at that in a standard shooter now. Any of these things, I mean, that stuff's been worked on since the early days of Quake.
Right.
You know, so what's that? I mean, there's 20 plus years of understanding how does that work on flat screen, and you know, and all of us just you just know that stuff automatically because it's been around so long. But with VR, yeah, okay, you get the idea of, you know, I've got a controller in my hand, I just sort of point with that. That works for a pistol.
Right.
How do you actually do? Because we like to think of ourselves as being kind of well known for our weapons, doing weapons very, very well that feel authentic, if not ultra realistic. You know, they feel authentic, they feel visceral. You actually feel like, you know, I've got a double barrel shotgun in my hands. It's not just going pew pew pew.
Yeah.
You know, you want that whole feel to it, and we've kind of refined that on a flat screen. Then it comes down to, okay, now we need to do that just as well in a medium that as yet is kind of unknown. You know, so it was pistols. We can kind of see how you do that. You know, two-handed weapons, shotties. You know, a Winchester. How do you make that stuff feel really good in VR? And that was a challenge.
Right. It kind of sounds like there's a lot of like, okay, we'll design this aspect of the game, and then do you guys have to go in there and just test the hell out of it to, like, you know what I mean, adjust things afterwards? Is there a lot of like trial and error stuff?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same to be honest, with any game for us. It's that, you know, we know what we want it to be. You kind of got a vision of what you want it to be. It's like, you know, Vietnam's kind of my baby. And you know, we had a vision of how we want that to look and feel and everything else. But ultimately, it then comes down to playtesting. You know, which is it's that thing of getting in there. And funny enough, we had this with first Killing Floor, because I remember only I think it was only about 2 or 3 weeks out from release. You know, the game had been great fun. We'd made a lot of changes and gone, you know, all this needs refinement and this needs refinement. And these weapons are crap. They need to be and you do a ton of work. And suddenly we actually realized at that point that in all the detail, or, you know, where we'd been paying a huge amount of attention to detail, we'd kind of lost sight briefly of the actual fun in the game. We realized it was only a few weeks out from release. Look, the guns are going bang and doing all the right stuff, but it doesn't feel fun anymore. What have we done wrong? And then that got us into an intense, you know, rounds of play testing, where basically, you know, you're going, okay, why doesn't this weapon feels feeble? Why? What are we doing wrong with it? And that's where that intense play testing comes in, and going, everything from each individual weapon. Why doesn't it feel powerful enough, or whatever it's supposed to be? And the actual gameplay. Then, you know, this is where you know, developers start talking about gameplay balance. That is so difficult to achieve, to get it right, because, you know, if you get it, let's be honest. I mean, if the game is just too easy, I mean, it might be fun briefly, but you're going to get bored fairly quickly. There's no challenge to it.
Right.
Yeah, and that's a lot of it. I mean, you know, I think John's on record as talking about, you know, things like, you know, what we're referred to as the skill, you know, as a skills gap.
Yeah.
I mean, it applies in multiplayer. It also applies in a co-op game, because if you are so overpowered against the enemies, there's no challenge. I mean, there are people, as we discovered with Killing Floor 1, we produced, I've forgotten, 3 difficulty levels when we first released the game. And we ended up having to put 2 more, not 1 more, but 2 more difficulty levels on top. Because, you know, with the volume of players we got, there are enough people who want the game to be insanely difficult.
Right.
You know, we've joked before that, you know, in all that tuning process, we got to the point with some of those difficulty levels where it had to be too difficult for all of us in the office. You know, because there were people who were still, you know, who were that much better than us at the game. Yeah, that, you know, there's probably, you know, there was only 1 or 2 people who could even stay at that level. You know, this is where sort of hell on earth difficulty came from. Was, you know, well, we just have to keep cranking it up until it's insanely difficult, and we just die horribly. You know, so, but it comes back to that thing about getting the game balance. And it's a thing I guess we learned with Killing Floor, is that actually we've got to cover a very broad spectrum of players with a game like that. which is very hard. You've got to be able to deal with people who feel like, hey, me personally, I'll go home and play a game of Killing Floor of an evening because I want to let off steam. I don't want to play on hell on earth difficulty level and be be sweating gently trying just to survive.
Right.
I really do just want to go on days like that. I just want to go home, round up a couple of friends, and we'll just go slaughter stuff with just a little bit of challenge and knowing that if if one of you screws up, you might make a mess of it. but that game balance, that's where it's the game balance, and the game and the actual feel of the game. The things like the look, it's actually much easier to refine, much easier to work on, because you just stand there and look at it and go, this jungle environment, it doesn't feel lush enough yet. We need more leaves. We need, you can kind of see that. Mm-hmm. The game balance and the weapon feel is a very subjective thing. That means the only way to do it is just to is to try it. Go, this doesn't feel right here. Tweak that. Recompile, play again. Did that make that feel better? Not quite how though I thought it would. Maybe we need a little bit more recoil on it. And it is you basically iterate on it at very high speed, and as far as possible at very, very high speed.
Right.
Jump in, play for 10, 15 minutes. Jump out, change stuff up. Takes 10 or 15 minutes. Jump back in, iterate, play, and you're just going around those loops, just trying to get that feel right. And that's, as you can gather from the long ranty answer, that's the hardest part.
Right. Well, and like you said, like you had mentioned before, that like say the jungle doesn't look right, so we need to implement and make it look more lush and stuff like that. How does that work? I want something to look different, or I want to implement something new into the game. How does that go from just being an idea to actually being in the game?
It depends on kind of where we are in the process. These days we kind of, when we're in development of a game, we'll go to up to a certain point. We'll have an overall schedule. If the game's going to take 3 or 4 years, we'll know that we intend to be at a vertical slice by this point. We intend to be at beta here, alpha here, beta there, and we'll allow ourselves, free reign in the earlier stages. Going right, we're these days where we're a bigger company. We go, okay, we want to get this. We really want to get this jungle environment right. So we'll take a few sprints and go, okay. You guys, we'll kick off a small sub team and just go, congratulations, guys. You're doing jungle for the next few weeks. Let's work out, what is it we want it to look like? How are we going to present it to make it feel like hot, sweaty, drippy jungle? And so you'll actually, you basically are investing the R&D time, mm-hmm. and the raw creative time. So earlier on in game development, there's a lot of that, just raw creative, where it's about we're inventing stuff. We're trying to think how we want things to hang together. We want what sort of look and feel do we want to the monsters? What is this environment actually going to be? And how do we affect that? Because later on, you'll get to the point as you're coming up to, particularly once you pass sort of alpha. You've kind of, by then, you've got to have, if you're ever going to have any chance of finishing the thing, you've got to have locked as much down as possible. And, you're kind of going, okay, we've got the basic feel for this type of weapon, this type of weapon, this type of weapon. We've got all the basics of the environment, the enemies and everything else. Now we just need to, it's unkind to say it this way, but it's basically, you move into sort of a big handle turning exercise, which is, okay, we now need 7 more of this type of weapon. We know how they're going to work. Now we need 7 more of them. It's take Vietnam. Okay, we're now doing Hue City. That means we know we know roughly what we want this city environment to look like. We've done 10 prototype buildings. Now we want the other 100 buildings. Here's all your guidelines. Go create them. And you do enter that stage where people talk about the mainstream of production. sure, you will tweak and and generally adjust and realize that X is a really bad idea and replace it. But if you're going to have any, and it's this thing about, if you have unlimited budget, well, you can keep on being wildly creative until everyone just dies of old age.
Right.
But if you have to get a game out the door and make some money from it, so you can stay in business, you have to draw a line under it. But then once, I mean, again, take Vietnam, close to my heart. You get into that stage now where we're 18 months after release. And we're still supporting the game, and we'll go on supporting it for a long time. But now that means, all the time we're sitting down thinking about, what new features do we want to add next year? We've been sitting down thinking about 2019 and thinking, what are the big ticket items we want to add next year? Well, there's this and this, and you can go look at we have a Trello board for which shows a roadmap and some of our thoughts, because we want people's reaction. Because there's no point in us investing, excuse me, a whole bunch of time and money and all the rest of it into features that people think is a stupid idea. We, as a semi-joke, we put a combat photographer up on the Trello boards for Vietnam, just to see what that sparked in the community, and if people go, "Why are you being so stupid?" or "No, I really, actually, that's a great idea. I really want to do that."
Right.
And we'll actually, it's difficult to do. The bigger you get and the bigger the game gets, the harder it is to do. But it's about, listening to, asking the community, the player base, what do you want?
Right.
There is no point in us producing stuff that players don't want. It's a waste of our time and effort, pisses off the players, and it's just generally bad all round. As you gathered, I mean, we're very much in the mindset of, no, we need to keep our games fresh.
Right.
They're not a fire and forget thing. I mean, Vietnam's a good example. It's a living beast. I mean, we've produced, the last update we added in, the whole multiplayer campaign thing.
Right.
And there's more big stuff coming for next year.
And I love that. I love the multiplayer campaign portion of it, because I mean, the stories are great. I love stories, campaigns in games, but when you're able to share that with somebody, that's, I don't know, it just makes it that much better to me, in my opinion. I don't know. But then go ahead.
Yeah, so it is a tricky one, because I have to. I think a lot of us here, we do. This is kind of how we were talking about Incursion earlier. We wanted to explore storytelling with Incursion, because that is something we want to do at some much more storytelling. With a Killing Floor game, particularly Killing Floor 2, every level is actually telling a story if you want to go looking for all the clues and all the rest of it. But that's storytelling with the environment, and we'd love to do more, actual real storytelling, and we'll see how that goes over time. But yeah, as you say, you look at the great multiplayer and the great co-op games. You get those organic stories that come out of God. Do you see that time when we were attacking attacking Objective Charlie in Hue City? Do you remember when this and that stuff is you can't make that stuff up. It has to happen organic.
One other thing that since we're talking about Vietnam, in Arvin, in that portion of it, Vietnam, you guys were actually able, one of the voice actors' father was fought in that, right?
Yeah, it was pure chance. I mean, because it's the difficulty for us. We have the first round of Vietnamese voice stuff that we did. I mean, because we were dealing with the SAG-AFTRA strike at the time. So getting any actors in this country was hard, to put it mildly, and we ended up going actually working with a studio in Vietnam. So when people we had, this is one of those moments where you just have to sort of bang your head on the desk. We've had people going, the Vietnamese announcer in for the Vietnamese side, he's speaking English, but it's so racist because he's doing this silly Vietnamese accent. Going, yeah, I hate to tell you, but the reason he sounds like that is that he's actually a Vietnamese guy whose English is not very good. and that's how he sounds. I'm sorry, it's not. It's like, I mean, I did one of the voices for the original Killing Floor, and I remember us getting flack for people going, "Oh yeah, but they're not real Brits." And I'm going, "Excuse me." I think my parents would be really pissed to hear that. Anyway, yeah, but I mean, when we did Arvin, we were going around, a new set of recordings, and we could actually use professional actors here in this country. The strike was over. And yeah, I mean, pure chance. I suppose when you think about it, it makes sense. One of the actors we got, one of the voice actors, his dad had fought with the Arvin, during the war, and the lucky ones are, say lucky, relative, the luckier ones, he got out and got to this country. I don't suppose sticking around for an Arvin Ranger, it would have been terribly good for your health at the end of the war. That was actually really interesting. The guy who was doing the voice acting said, "Oh, look, do you mind if I, run this by my dad, because I want to make sure I get the inflection right, because while he speaks Vietnamese, he's been brought up in this country, so his Vietnamese isn't as native as his father's." So we said, "No, sure." And then we realized that he said he actually wanted to check that this is sort of stuff that an Arvin soldier would actually say, and we realized that his dad actually was an Arvin soldier. So we just couldn't resist, doing a small interview and things.
Right.
It was fascinating.
It looked, I mean, and you guys have that up on a developer diary as well, or it's not. I don't know if it's technically a developer diary, but that's on your YouTube channel as well. And I found that like super interesting. That I love little things like that that just happen to work out, where you can get actual details from somebody who was actually there, or like real historical events. All that stuff is just makes the game so much cooler.
Yeah.
If we can, let's go ahead and change gears here for a little bit slightly. One of the reasons that I really wanted to reach out to your development company specifically was because of how you guys treat your employees. And with all the media coverage surrounding Telltale and Rockstar, and just what's been going on with development companies in general, developing games and then laying off their employees and stuff like that.
I guess we'll start off. I found some old posts of yours on a website called Gamasutra.
Gamasutra, yeah, okay.
And
you found some of my old comments on some of these. Yeah, okay. Carry on.
Well, you kind of. I mean, I don't want to say it's not. I guess it's not. I don't see it as a rant if you agree with it. So I'm not going to say that's what it was.
I've done 1 or 2 rants on Gamasutra. Yeah, carry on.
But yeah, I mean, you've kind of commented on how you see some of the development companies treating their employees and how they treat them as consumables. And I was just wondering if you could kind of tell how your company approaches that in a completely opposite way.
Yeah, I think the thing is, before anyone gets the idea that, we're these wonderful altruistic people or anything else like that, none of this is for that reason. It's just that, particularly, I mean, John and myself both had careers before we did this. Bill and Dave had done some work in the games, not huge. And I think both John and I came in particularly with just a basic mindset that says that, being successful in business does not require you to be a dick.
Right.
And I've worked around the tech sector for, well over 30 years now, and I hate those really trite phrases, but it's that thing that your single biggest asset are the people who work here. So why wouldn't you try and look after everybody?
Right. It's
hard enough to find, the great talent, the really great talent, and to get them to come and work for you and the rest of it. Why would you then treat people? Why would you then treat people, let's just be kind and say carelessly? Sure, there's, because I think a lot of what goes on isn't done maliciously. I mean, I know I've met people who do it maliciously, and, I will punch them in the face on sight.
Right.
Just on principle. But yeah, to some extent, the games industry kind of reminds me of the IT sector when I first started, over 30 years ago, where it was a bunch of techies running companies, a lot of whom were completely unsuited for running companies. They just happened to be there because they kind of created the thing in the first place. So there's a decent chunk of that around. But there's that... You've got those mix of mindsets that, put together badly, lead to some horrible results. You've got kind of big corporate mindset where... and I've been there, so I do understand it to some extent, but where you are utterly driven by the shareholders.
Right.
And and you forget that the shareholders may be the most obvious stakeholder in your business, but there are other stakeholders, which include the other people running the company and all your employees, as well as all your customers. And people get in big corporate will get focused utterly on the number.
Right.
And this is where you see some big companies. There was that rash of it in about 2008-9, flowed over into 2010, I think, where some of the very big companies were just closing studios all over the place.
Yeah.
We've got what we need out of this. We're no longer printing money, so go shut a few of them. And you realize, I understand from the numbers point of view, I understand it, but all of these things, whether it's just dumping on studios, closing businesses, treating your employees like cattle. Mm-hmm. These are, to me, it all smacks of just somewhere between careless, stupid, shoddy management. And frankly, especially, we're in 2018, for Christ's sake.
Yeah. There
is no excuse, none, for those sort of behaviors. I can understand, you look back at, my home country back in the Industrial Revolution. Yes, we used to have child labor. Mm-hmm. But guess what? We figured out that's actually not a nice thing to do. Right. Putting children into factories for 12, 14-hour days at the age of 12. Yeah, no, you have to stop behaving like that. Right. As I say, maliciously or otherwise, getting your employees to turn in, as has been described recently, 100-hour weeks. Right. Is not a way to treat people. But even if you're not going to be a nice person, ultimately it is not sustainable. Yeah. There is a 40-hour working week for a reason. And it's not just because some union somewhere went, no, we're not working any more than 40 hours. It's because ultimately, on average, most people can't turn in much more than that, effectively during a week. Sure, you can do short, sustained bursts, but if you do that, you've got to manage it sensibly. You've got to, if someone's going to work a 100-hour week, and yes, I understand. There are moments when it happens. Something goes catastrophically wrong, and someone's got to fix it. Yeah. But you've then got to think about, okay, how much damage have we done to this person, this team, and what do we need to do about it? Not when the project's finished next year, but right now. If someone's churned out a 100-hour week because of something catastrophic, first off, you've got to figure out how to make damn sure that doesn't happen again. So don't put people in the position. And the second is, it's one of the bits that seems to get forgotten on a regular basis. How do we put it right now? If someone's turned in a 100-hour, we do this because we have the situation that reality says a coder has got a problem that's been nagging for a couple of days. Here it is we're at 250 right now, and in a couple of hours' time, maybe a coder somewhere in this building will be going, "Oh, I've nearly got this. I think I know what to do now." Yeah. And they're going to want to keep going for 2 or 3 hours more to nail it. Right. And that means they won't get home till 9 o'clock. I understand the mentality. I've been there myself. I want to get this finished. And not because anyone's pressuring me to, but just because I want to get it done. But, we more and more look at this stuff and think, and say to people, look, okay, you stayed in till 9. We don't expect to see you for, be late the next day. Right. Take the break, take the rest. because you cannot sustain that sort of pace. I mean, I'm sure there's arguments that say, well, some people can. I'm sure there's some who can, but how long before you burn out?
Yes.
And the problem with all of this is that you don't know where everybody's breaking is. Just because someone likes to work long hours doesn't mean it's a good thing.
Right.
We actively discourage people doing it because, again, it just always comes back to that point. It's not sustainable. It is not sustainable for you as an individual. We've always said we're here for the long term. And we kind of realized that actually means, no, it does really mean the long term. Not just this week and this month and this year, but for many years. And we want all those employees who want to stay with us for that long to be able to.
Right.
And unless you make the whole business and everything around the business and the people sustainable, you're going to break things. And don't get me wrong. Part of this was driven by the fact that it was around the release of RO2. We famously or infamously, as how you like to look at it, realized that we got ourselves into a corner around that release. And we buried some stupid hours. A lot of us did. And we came out the backside of that with people exhausted, genuinely exhausted. And we realized, John and I probably nearly ended up divorced, not just from each other. And we realized that applied to, everybody else in the business that, who'd we hadn't been forcing them along to do it, but people forget that if that's the way you lead, that's the way you are kind of expecting people to follow.
Right.
It's no good going, oh, well, I don't expect everyone to do what I do. If they see you as, as the leader, as the example, they're going to try and follow. So you've got to be absolutely aware of what you're doing, because it doesn't just apply to you. And at the end of all that, we released the game in October of 2011. We actually ended up taking the whole company and families and everything else away on a cruise in the January. A, as an apology, and B, so we could say, we're never going to do this again.
Right.
This is a cycle that we cannot do. It's not. It always comes back to this thing. It's not sustainable. It's not sustainable for the individuals, for the project, for the company, or anything else. And as you can see, you got me off into the 10-minute rant on that topic.
Well, no, I mean, I think that's very important to touch on because, like I said, the media, grabs a hold of something and takes off with it, and you can see that with what happened to Telltale here recently.
Sure.
But
Telltale, and when you look at the Rockstar team,
yeah.
And it's it's very difficult to understand, quite what was going on, because you're getting very, very mixed messages.
Right.
With some of the others that have come up, about behaviors in companies, some of it you realize some people have managed to keep a lid on it for a while, and then, a horrible set of behaviors actually becomes public.
Right.
And we sat down, and a chief admin officer who's responsible for HR and everything else. We just said, you look at some of these stories, and we kind of email them around internally and going, that can never be us. We can never be that company. At the end of the day, I think people appreciate working for a company that they believe in, that they can trust, and that's kind of very important to us.
In addition to treating your employees so well, there's another incentive as well, isn't there? I mean, from what I hear, you guys take 10% of a game's profit and you distribute it to the employees. Is that correct?
I didn't know. I've forgotten that was public knowledge. It's not 10% of a new game. What we do is we have a profit share scheme at the end of each quarter, because we thought about doing it annually and thought, no, we need to do this a bit more regular. At the end of each quarter, assuming we've made a profit, because that's, when we're in one of those phases when we're investing heavily in new games, we don't make a profit. There'll be a quarters. One of our aims in growing the company is to make a profit every single quarter. But no, it's not about just a new game. We just take a look at the company's bottom line at the end of each quarter. The CFO takes that bottom line profit, takes 10% of it, and that 10% forms a profit share pool for the employees. So, Killing Floor 2 has been absolutely killing it in the last 2 or 3 weeks in, a Halloween event.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, which ideally should go towards, I hope, someone else who also gets some of the profit share.
Right.
You know, go towards a good, healthy profit at the end of Q4, which will, you know, mean we can pay people a nice profit share in January. We started off doing a completion bonus. We actually did that on RO2, and we realized what we're actually rewarding is completing the game. You're thinking, what does that actually mean? Does that mean get it done as quickly and cheaply as possible so we can get our profit share?
Right.
And what about updates to the game? I mean, again, it's that, you know, our ethos says, you know, our games are going to be out there and supported for multiple years. You know, what happens to people who are working on support for a Vietnam as opposed to development of a new title?
Right.
So no, stuff this. We need something let's go much simpler. Just take the quarterly profit, take a chunk of it, give it to the employees. End of story.
All right, so to finish this thing off, if there was somebody listening who was wondering how to get their feet wet in developing a game, or just interested in, you know, coding or art design or something like that, if there was someone interested in working for a company like yours or trying to start a company like yours, would there be a piece of advice that you would give them? Would it be to finish school? Would it be just to pick up a coding book? You know, what would it be?
We do a fair amount of presentations to schools where I have to remember to say, you need to finish school, because I usually have a teacher there. At the end of the day, we care not very much about what degree you get or else. What we care about is what you have done, what you can do. You know, especially when you're in school, every single tool that you could need is now free when you're in school. You know, Unreal Engine is free. Unity is free to students. Well, Unreal Engine, I mean, everyone keeps changing their deals, but I mean, until such time as you make money on a project, the whole engine stuff is free. You know, a lot of the modeling tools and animation tools and all this stuff is free to students or very, very low cost. So if you feel like you want to do some of this stuff, literally go and do it. There is absolutely nothing stopping you doing. Yeah. You know, there's tutorials by the bucket load online. You know, the thing we say to people at every level from middle school on up is just do it. There's, you know, 10, 15 years ago, you had to invest in, you know, this sort of computer and, oh God, I need to start buying all this software, so I better use the cheap version or a hooky version of it. Now you don't have to do any of that. You know, find something that looks like it interests you and just try it. Because one of the things we point out to people is that, look, if you're trying this stuff out while you're in school or your college or university, first off, don't come and show us your university class project. I mean, you had to do that.
Right.
We're not interested. What we're interested in is what interested you and what did you do. You know, and it's that thing that, you know, given there's nothing stopping you doing it, go do stuff, because if it isn't your school project and it's for your own interest, if you foul it up, no one ever needs to know. You know, you haven't screwed up your degree or anything else, and it's not like you're at work where someone goes, "You're a really crap modeler, aren't you?" Yeah, you know, you can go stick a fork in and you think, "Oh, I really want to be a weapons modeler," and go try it, share your stuff on forums and stuff. And then if it turns out you're rubbish at it, well, it doesn't matter. You know, then you go, actually, I'm really much better at the animation side of this. I'll do that instead. No one cares that, you know, as a 16-year-old, you were a crap modeler. Right. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. So go, you know, if you're interested, you know, pick on something you're actually interested in. Like, oh, I could do some really cool animation. So go get some animation software. You can get it free. And try it. You know, learn. First off, it'll tell you, do I actually have the dedication and a real interest, or do I just want to poke a fork in?
Right.
Because it's going to be a lot of work. You know, getting to the level of skill that, you know, our guys have here is a lot of work. It's years of work. It's not sort of, you know, a weekend learning. It's years of learning. But the only way to find out is try it. I say the big key now is you can try it for absolutely nothing except a bit of your time.
Right. I think in one of your developer diaries, I'm not sure if it was your creative director or who it was, but he said, "Oh, your portfolio sucks. You know, come back when it doesn't suck." You know?
Yeah, that was Leland when he was I think he was a senior. He was an environmental artist at the time, and he was reviewing a guy who is now one of our character modelers. Yeah, Andrew came up to him, and Leland obviously had a long afternoon reviewing student portfolios and just basically just let rip. And I remember him coming to me afterwards and going, I think I may have just ruined someone's life. And I said, don't worry about it. Look, it's done now. You know, he'll learn from it or he won't. And as you gathered from the story, Andrew came back the next year, went to find Leland and went, "Hey, look, I heard what you had to say, and this is what I've done about it." And cut the long story short, he now works for us and has done for a number of years.
If you guys are interested in what they've been working on lately, they've released DLC for Killing Floor 2. It's the Halloween of Horrors DLC, and my God, it just looks freaking awesome. You got everybody in there. You got Dracula, Wolfman. I saw Dr. Jekyll in there. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, there's huge numbers of people playing that at the moment, so you couldn't get a better time to jump in on that.
All right, well, Alan, the Vice President of Tripwire Interactive, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to come and speak with us. I really do appreciate it.
My pleasure. Enjoyed it.
And to those of you who are still listening, if you guys have any favorite developers, publishers, modders, or anyone that has anything to do with the video game industry, if you have a favorite video game and you would love to hear the human aspect behind that game, put those in the comments down below, and I am more than willing to reach out to them. But for now, I am Fatty McButterpants, and I will see you guys next time.